Um, when and where were you evacuated?
I was evacuated to Brighton on the 1st of September. That's 2 days before the war was actually declared. 1st of September, to Brighton. And we were playing we all went with the whole school of us went. And the boys from my class and I were all up in a very large place down there called the Wild Park, which was a game reserve and was protected for the use of wild animals like foxes and wild birds. And we were up on the top of this hill when, on the morning of September the 11th, the war was declared. But we didn't know at the time, but then we were told all to come down because someone had seen an aeroplane flying close by. And they actually thought it might have been the Germans attacking. But of course, as the war had only been on for about 10 minutes, it was very, very unlikely. And of course it wasn't.
What happened to your families?
Well, they stayed in London. My sister obviously went to work, and then she went into a reserved occupation for a short while, which was being a supervisor for, believe it or not, the manufacture of radios for submarines, which is a very strange thing for her to do.
What were you... Oh, sorry.
And she married, as I told you, the American servicemen later on from there. When I left Brighton, I was re-evacuated because at the fall of France, everyone said, oh, we must get all the children away from the coast, which was a silly place to put us in the first place, but of course nobody ever expected that France would collapse. So we then moved back to the middle of Surrey, a town called Chertsey. And at Chertsey, it wasn't a very good place to put us because we were quite near a factory that built Wellington bombers, and it was often attacked by the German Air Force, so we managed to survive. But I came back to London several times during my sojourn at Chertsey because it was easy to get to London. It was only 25 miles. And I was in London for several of the heavy blitzes that were up there.
What were you doing whilst you were evacuated?
When we were evacuated, we were usually in Brighton. We were in the Wild Park quite a lot of the time. We used to catch birds' eggs. We used to take from the nest, which was, we only ever took one. We never took any unless there were at least 4. This, of course, is now outlawed and no one can do it. And when we went to Chertsey, they too had a very fine wild type of park called Bell Hill, and we used to travel up there and cycle around on our bikes all the time.
What were the places you were evacuated to like?
Well, the first one was on a large council estate, a newly built one, a place called Moulsecoombe, near a village. That was in Brighton, and they were sort of modern town-type houses, which were fine. When we went to Chertsey, we were put, I and another boy, billeted on a very old lady, far too old to have taken anybody in a cottage which probably dated from about 1875. It was very old and ancient. And she had been married to a soldier, and she'd spent a lot of time in Egypt near the pyramids.
Are you still in contact with people you made friends with when you were evacuated?
No. Most of them, like me, have reached a very staggeringly old age. And the people in Brighton who I stayed with, he was a Yorkshireman. He was the chief sergeant, or probably a station sergeant it's called, in Brighton. But after a while, he went back to Yorkshire and took his family with him, so I didn't see them again. And the dear old lady, of course, in Chertsey died.
Do you have any interesting stories from when you were evacuated?
Any interest in
Stories?
stories?
Yeah, from when you were evacuated.
Well, I don't really know. Nothing particularly exciting, and they weren't very historic. Brighton, of course, was historic, but no, there's nothing particular there.
How long were you evacuated for?
Let's see, 1939 till, how old would I be? 11? must have been to 1944. 1943, 44 I came back. But when we were in Chertsey, in Surrey of course, we were there when the Battle of Britain took place. And I and the rest of our classes were shuffled down into air raid shelters. But sometimes we were out on field trips during nature, so we had to take shelter in ditches. Pardon me. And we could watch the Battle of Britain